Okay, so basically today we'll start talking about guys. We'll try to finish off the CSS ka thing in the next two classes, aaj or kal, if possible, and then next week se we'll start with JavaScript. So basically, see CSS में बहुत सारे topics हैं, like it's a huge topic, but we don't have to discuss about every single thing. Okay, like whatever I discussed, uh, जो भी मैं complete करने वाला हूँ CSS में, that is enough. That basics are enough. And then as in when you have to build something, uh, always just go back and uh, google करके या फिर mdn में देख you can do that. Now the important thing here is, see guys, as a developer, right, you have to be very resourceful. Okay, you can't remember every single thing as a programmer. It's impossible almost. Now, आप लोग doctor नहीं हो कि you remember every single tablet and all. That's not possible in programming. Okay, the important thing here is आपको you have to understand all the high level stuff. At a very high level, if you're able to understand uh, the topics, that is enough, because that will help you to go to Google and then look up that topic and learn what the answer is and then apply it in your project. Okay, that is what majority of the software engineering is. Okay, you ask any of your seniors or friends who are working as software developers, that is what they'll do. They don't write all the code by themselves. They have to go to Google, they have to find the answers, then they have to apply it there. Okay, that's the normal process that happens as a software developer. Now in CSS, that's more important, because in CSS there is no way you remember every single thing. आपको CSS में बहुत, see, we'll just open up this MDN thing and check एक बार. So MDN में if you go for, let's say, font, तो एक just the font itself has so many properties. It's almost impossible to remember every single thing, right? And it's not even required actually. Okay, because interviews में भी नहीं पूछते हैं कि how many font variations है, वो सब कुछ नहीं पूछेंगे. तो इंटरव्यूज में जो भी पूछेंगे वो मैंने कवर कर लिया है और कवर करने वाला हूँ आज और कल. लेकिन या, you don't have to remember every single thing. It's just very important to like know the high level details. Okay, so always just focus ki whatever I'm teaching you at that specific moment, you have to understand whatever I'm teaching you. Okay, after a while you might forget whatever I taught you. That is fine, but once you go and revise that, because you understood it very well the first time, you'll be able to understand it the next time also when you revise. Okay, so basically my bottom line is, don't focus on mugging up stuff. Like ratna nahi hai. Okay, just understand whatever I'm teaching you and ask any questions that you have. Okay, so today we're going to talk about this topic called pseudo classes and what they are. Okay, so basically these are special keywords that go after selectors. Now, what are selectors? We already discussed multiple times. We have an element or type selector, and then we have a class selector, we have ID selectors. Now, iske baad, you can add any pseudo classes. Okay, we look at the examples, you'll understand, like, what they are. But basically, these can be divided into two types again. Okay, the first type you can say like dynamic, and the second thing you can say is structural or advanced structural. Okay, guys, one more thing about programming is, a lot of words might seem very complex, but they're actually very simple. Once you understand what they mean, the meanings become very easy for you to understand. Okay, like abhi advanced structural बोल के बहुत बड़ा word है, but it's actually very simple. एक बार मैं जब पढ़ाऊंगा, it become very simple for you guys. Okay, इसलिए whenever you learn something new, when you see such complex words, don't get scared. Okay, ultimately it's a very simple concept behind the scenes. Now, the example for this would be whenever, okay, so let's say ki now observe here. See, once I hover over this, जब मैं hover करता हूँ, when I hover this, ये थोड़ा right को move हो रहा है, ये arrow जो है, and when I hover over this, इसको underline भी आ रहा है. This is called hovering, and the spelling of that is this hover. Okay, so इसका example is this. Dynamic में ये hover का state आएगा. Advanced structural is if you want to like establish any parent-child relationship. Example, parent-child relationship. So this is one example. Okay, we'll look into them in detail, but just remember that there are two kinds of pseudo classes. Whenever you hover over stuff, that is one example. Okay, now let's talk about dynamic thing in more detail. Now let me just remove all of this. Okay, so let's come here. Dynamic pseudo classes. Oh, yes, spelling classes. Now this basically allows us to style an element in relation to the user actions. Like for example, जब भी मैं एक link पे जैसे hover करता हूँ, नहीं तो whenever I've clicked on the button but not released it yet. Okay, like if I click on a button, उसका एक state होगा. लेकिन मैंने release the button, उसका एक और state होगा. नहीं तो let's say कि whenever there's a checkbox, like let's say checked बोल के I think there'll be one example. See, whenever I check a box, this is also a user action, right? Or whenever I select a radio button, that is also user action. Basically, whenever we make any user action, उस user action के हिसाब से, if you want to change some style, that will come under dynamic pseudo classes. Okay, let's take an example now. So let me open up my VS Code again, and let me zoom in. Okay, so which is the CSS ka folder? This one, yes. Index.html mein we have all of these things. So I'll just do one thing. I'll just remove all this thing which we don't need, and yahan par I'll just add one anchor tag. Go to Google, and this one will have a href, and let's give the link here on google.com. Okay, so this is there. Now if we open the browser, let's run this. Let's click on go live here, and we're currently here, but I think it has some predefined style, which are all of this. So let's just remove all of this. Right now it's like this. Okay, now if you want to add some style based on the hover state, जब भी ये mouse आप hover करोगे इसके ऊपर, you want to change the styles. Okay, if that is your thing, then what you can do is, see, first of all, see, when you do this, all you're saying is ये पूरा red color होगा. लेकिन मैं क्या चाहता हूँ कि जब मैं hover करता हूँ, then I want red color, which means you can do, see, after the selector, you have to add one single colon and give the hover state. Now when I hover over this, color will change like this. Okay, so all that's happening here is after the selector you add a pseudo class, which means this is your pseudo class right now. After colon you have hover, that's a pseudo class. Okay, now there are other kinds of pseudo class as well. Let's say ki a and active, and let's say I'll add a color of green here. This active pseudo class is applied when you click on the link, but you have not released it yet. Like let's say कि जब मैं hover करता हूँ red होता है, लेकिन when I click on that, okay, अभी मैंने click किया है, लेकिन मैंने release नहीं किया. When I release it, this happens. But as long as I've clicked on the link, that is an active state. ठीक है, तो अभी मैं मेरा mouse का जो की है मैं वो दबा के रखा हूँ. Okay, I've not released it yet. That's why it's the active state. Now, if you want to give a different color after the link has been visited, you can add the visited to pseudo class, and the color will be, let's say, blue. And let's say, see, अभी visit हो चुका है इसलिए वो blue है. Let's add one more, and let's say go to yahoo.com. ठीक है? Like this. ठीक है? Whenever, because both of them have been visited, it's like this. लेकिन if I hover over them, that will be in red color. What happened? It's not. कुछ तो हुआ है guys. 1 second. It's stuck, I think. So we are here. Now when I hover over them, what is wrong? Something is wrong. Why is the state not applied? I have a href here. I have a hover. Oh, because all of these things have come back. That's why. 1 second. So hover also doesn't work then. Okay. What if I do this? Achha. So when visited is there, somehow it's not working. I didn't know this. Achha. So when you have visited, this hover thing will be overwritten by this. So what I understood today. Okay, good. Okay. Basically, you can add your pseudo classes like this after the colon, and whatever you add after the colon, that will be the action. Like the user, when he like user is पे hover karega, the color will be this. I can even let's say I can add or increase the font size of this as well. Let's say I will make it 45 pixels. It is very big. When I hover over this is what happens. Okay, this is a dynamic pseudo class. But now let's talk about the behavior, the structural pseudo classes, which are this thing. Now let's say I want to basically target the first child within a section. Let's say I'll create a container here, and let's say let's say I'll go with this. Let's say I have an article. I'll say P, I'll say lorem. And let me add more items like this. Okay, so we have a document right here, which is not refreshing. I'll just close this actually and restart the server. Okay, now let's say I want to target the first paragraph element within the article. Now, one way is to obviously you can add a class here or add an ID and then target it like that. That is one way. But you can still do it. I mean, you can still target the element without adding any class or ID by using a pseudo class. And a pseudo class for that we have is, let's say कि जो article के अंदर जो paragraph tag है. See, if I target this and give the color of it, everything gets red, right? Because what I'm saying here is जो भी paragraph tag है इस article के अंदर उन सारे paragraph tags को ये color दे दो. That is what I'm saying. But I want to target only the first child, the first paragraph element within the article. And for that, I can do first child. When you give a pseudo class of first child on any element, तो जो पैराग्राफ टैग जो फर्स्ट चाइल्ड है इस आर्टिकल के अंदर, that will be selected here. Okay, and similarly you also have, let's say you want to select the last child, you can do last child here like this. Okay, so apart from first method you have other stuff as well, but these both are the most common ones. Okay, I'll just repeat. You have the first child here, which will select the first child within all of your list, and if you want to select the last child here, that is this. Okay, you have the first child and you have the last child as well. Got it? Now let's say ki I want to select one second. Okay. Now let's say ki I will add one div here. Hi, and let me also add one div here. And I'll say bye. Okay. Now let's see. This rule is no longer working because the paragraph tag inside this article is no longer the first child. Okay. इस article के अंदर अभी first child is what? It's a div, and last child is again a div, which means the paragraph element is no longer the first child or the last child within this article. Because of which this rule will not work. See, this rule will only work when the paragraph is the last child or the first child of the article. Like if I say, let's say, I'll add the first child here and I'll make it green. Okay, both will not work because what I'm saying here is, see, the paragraph tag should either be the first child or the last child within the article. लेकिन अभी इसके अंदर the paragraph is neither the first child nor the last child. Okay, and that's an issue now. Now, what do we do if we want to select the paragraph tag which is the first child of this article? Like it doesn't matter if it's the first child or not. लेकिन among the paragraph tags, जितने भी paragraph tags है उसमें I want to select the first child, and for that we have last of type and first of type. Now it will work because what we're saying is, see, article में जितने भी paragraphs है तो उन paragraph में से last paragraph जो भी है उसको target करो. And here we're saying the same thing. So article के अंदर जितने भी paragraph tags है तो उस paragraph tags में जो भी first paragraph tag है उसको select करो. Pranjal is asking, can we use adjacent sibling since of the first child? See, sibling, these are not siblings now. So article के अंदर is the first. See, you cannot use the combinator here. What I want to do is I want to set the first paragraph tag. So because of which we cannot use whatever you're saying. Pranjal, is that okay? Okay. And Rajendra is saying, can we do article div p? That is not possible, Rajendra, because what will happen in your code is all the paragraph tags within the div will be selected. And first of all, okay, wait. So I'll tell you what Rajendra has mentioned. I'm copying the code here. See, this is what Rajendra has mentioned. Okay, so Rajendra has mentioned this. Basically, he's saying the color should be green, like this. But the problem with this is, see, what we're saying here is, so article के अंदर जो div है और उसके अंदर जो paragraph tag है, लेकिन यहाँ पर we don't have paragraph inside the div ना. Div जो है वो separate है. Div के अंदर we have no paragraph here, which means you're not selecting anything at the end of the day. Okay, this will not work. What you're saying here is article के अंदर जो div है और उसके अंदर जो paragraph tag है, but we do not have a paragraph tag within the div here. Okay, and Nasir, Nisar, I didn't understand what you said. Nisar, I cannot hear you. Your voice is breaking, man. Pranjal, see, the code that you wrote will work, but the question here is article के अंदर जो भी first paragraph tag है, okay? When I'm looking at this, that is a meaning I'm getting. See, I can understand looking at both of this code key. I am selecting the paragraph tag, which is the first paragraph tag within the article. But the code that you wrote, let me copy that. See, copy नहीं हो रहा है, एक minute. So div plus p. This will work fine. But looking at this, we're not able to understand कि ये div किसके अंदर है. And it's not even telling us कि whatever paragraph is here, that is the first paragraph of the article. वो meaning we're not able to get now. लेकिन my question is जो भी article के अंदर जो भी paragraph है, which is the first paragraph, वो select करो. These both give that meaning. लेकिन this one does not give that meaning. This thing is only saying कि whatever paragraph tag is there just after div, select that. But here we are explicitly saying that article के अंदर जो भी है वो select करो.
Sir, we can select center paragraph.
Center paragraph is not possible. We don't have a direct pseudo class for that. We don't have for that. Make sense?
Okay.
Okay, cool. So yeah, and Pranjal, did that clear your question?
यस सर. सर लेकिन मेरा एक क्वेश्चन है कि जब भी हम कोई भी ऐसे पेज बनाएंगे, वेब पेज बनाएंगे, तो हमें कैसे पता चलेगा कि कहाँ पे हमें sudo कोड इस्तेमाल करना है या फिर क्लास बना के या फिर आईडी बना के करना है?
What you'll get with experience, buddy. That is all I can tell. So see, once you start building an actual app, you can start thinking how to do that. See, like in this case, if all you want to do is select the first paragraph tag, उसके लिए because we have a pseudo class, we do not need to use a class anymore. Okay? इसीलिए in this specific case, we don't need a class. Yeah, but yeah, see, like I could have easily added a class here and worked with that. मैं यहाँ पर class add कर सकता हूँ and I can target that. वो भी ठीक है, there is nothing wrong in that. लेकिन there's just one more way of writing the same thing. And which one to use what, that you'll get with experience. Once you start building more projects, you'll understand that also. ठीक है? Now next, let's say कि I want to like select one specific element within the list. Okay, let's say I want to select the second child or the third child. I can do that also. Or let's say article and p, and I have nth child बोल के there is a pseudo class which will be like this. Now inside the bracket you can give which child you want to select. Let's say I want to select the third child. I have 3 here, and I'll select the color to be red. Now what this means is article के अंदर जो भी paragraph है which is the third child. Okay, don't select all the paragraph tags, only select the paragraph tag which is the third child within the article. Okay, and we're doing that here. Let's say I want to select the 5th child with an article. I can pass the value here, 5. I get red here. Okay, this is how it works. So nth child will work like this. And also, let's say you want to select all the even number of childs, which means you want to select the second one and the 4th one and the 6th one. You can directly add even here. Okay, so the second one is selected and 4th one is selected. Now we can even add odd here. When you add odd, you get this. Okay. So wait, let me do the same thing with even and give a color of green. Event and even. It will be like this. Okay. So I'm selecting all the paragraph tags, which are the odd paragraph tags, which means this and this are odd paragraph tags, so we're getting color of red, but the even ones will get the color of green. That is how nth child will work. Okay. This was all about the pseudo classes. Now there are many more, which I would like recommend you to go here and check. So the search pseudo classes, and if you see here, there's so many examples which you can check. You have this thing called link and visited. We always check this, and there's so many other things as well. We have checked hover and active as well. So this focus also is very important. It will work with elements, with input elements. Like specifically, you can try that out. But there are many others also. I'm just trying to see where. So this one is what we just learned. Okay, we have nth child, we have nth last child. We have so many things here. Just go and give it a shot. Okay, very big list of items here. But most of them are very straightforward. Like if you aren't out, just click on the link. It'll open up the example, and we can just go through that. Okay. Now next, let's talk about one more very important topic, and that topic is about the display property. Display property. Now every element basically has an inbuilt display property. Like let's say you look paragraph tag. There is a property called display in CSS. Now there are many values for this, but the three main values which we are going to learn about today are block and inline and inline block. Okay, we have these three types of value. I mean, there are other values as well, but we'll learn about them later. But today we're going to learn about these three types of values. Okay. Now the display property can take any of these three values. Now, so every element by default has a display property value by default. Like for example, the paragraph tag has a display property of block, but the span and anchor, both of them have a display property of inline. Okay. Now no element has a display property of inline block by default. वो लोग हम देते हैं. Like we explicitly mention कि this element must have a display property of inline block. Now what are the differences between these three? We'll learn about that. Now let me create well, let this be. So let's okay. Before that, let's just go back to a document, and I'll inspect this element again. And let me zoom this in. When you inspect this element, like I told you last time, so every element, it has some default styles in the browser, right? Let's go. How do I make this open? Now look at this. See, there is this thing called user agent style sheet, which basically is coming from the browser, and that gives a default display property of block. Which means every paragraph tag has a default display property of block. Now, if I give a span, let's say, first of all, let's remove all of this extra paragraph tags. Let's say I create a span here. Span, I am a span. Now, when I inspect the span element, see the span doesn't have a display property of anything, which means the default display property, if the browser doesn't give anything, is inline. Okay. And if you go to computed here, and then if you search for display, you can see inline here, which means the default display property of a span element is inline. Now, what is the difference between both of this? See, whenever you have a block level display property, okay, what happens is the element will take the entire width of the container. Let me give you an example. So let's remove all of this. Okay. So what I'll do is first I'll target the article. I'll give it a border of 10 pixels, solid, I think. Okay, this is the border of the article. Now let me target a paragraph and let me give it background color, maybe green. If you observe something, by default, the paragraph is taking up the entire width of the container. Okay, very important to know. So every block level element, okay, like I told you, the block, all the paragraph elements are block level elements, right? So whenever there's a display property of block on an element, it means it is a block level element. And every block level element, they take up the entire width of the container. Now this pink color is the container, which is the article. And the paragraph takes up the entire width by default. Now, see, even if it doesn't require the entire width, it'll still take up the entire width. So let me prove it to you. I'll just remove all of this text. So in this case, the text actually stops here. Yahi tak hai text. Lekin, even then it's taking up the entire width of the containing parent. Okay. And that is why, and that is the reason it's called a block level element. So all block level elements, they take up the entire width of the container by default. That is the first thing, guys. And second thing is, whenever you have a block level element, they always start on a new line. What I mean by that is, let's say I will create one more paragraph. I start on a new line, and let me do a copy paste, and let me say ki me too. Okay, when I do this, one second, guys. I'm sorry. Yes, so I got a call. Now, if you observe something, every new block level element will always start on a new line. Now, even though there is some space here, this block level element will not start here. वो हमेशा नया line so it always starts on a new line by default. Now this applies to every block level element. Okay, the other block level elements we have are H1s. Like this, I am also a block level element. Okay, which means now if I target H1 again, and if I give a, let's say, background color of this, so even this takes up the entire width, and it always starts on a new line. Now see, most of the elements that we have in HTML are block level elements. Most of them, which are like divs and H1s and paragraphs and section, article, all those elements are all block level elements. Okay. Now this is all about the block level elements. One more important thing here is, see, when you have a block level element, you can give it a height and width. Okay, you can set an explicit height and width. Let's say I give this a width of 500 pixels only. When I do that, see, this was by default, it was the full width, right? But because I've reduced the article width to 500 pixels, everything inside it will again become 100% of this thing again. Okay, that is a default behavior. And HR also is a block element, that is correct, Ranjan. Okay, HR and BR, they are also block level elements because they take up the entire width of the container, and they always start on a new line. Like for example, let's give a HR here. See this thing. So I don't know if you can see, but yeah, this thing right here. Okay, it takes up the entire width of the containing element. Now let me remove this. Okay. Now that is the thing. So let's say so if I want to change the height also, I can do that as well. I can, the height will be 600 pixels, let's say. Now it's become this much. And I can reduce it, let's say, to 400 pixels. Which means on a block level element, you can always set a height and width. That is possible. Now let's talk about the inline elements. Iske baad, I'm going to add a couple of inline elements, which is, I'm going to add span. I am the first inline element, and I'll add one more inline element here. And now if you see here, what is happening here is, first let's go ahead and target the span and give it a border of 1 pixel solid red. Or let me actually increase this thing to 10. If you see here, see guys, the first difference when compared to the display or block is inline elements do not take the 100% of the width of the parent by default. They take up the width of the content, which means jitna bhi content hai, wo utna hi width rahega. Okay, it won't take up more width than the content of the element. That is the first thing. The second thing is, it does not start on a new line. Observe here, see, all of these always start on a new line because they're block level elements. But the inline elements, they do not start on a new line. They start on the same line. That is the second difference. And the third difference is, you cannot give a height and width to an inline element. Let's try giving height and width. Let's say, height is maybe 200 pixels and width will be 500 pixels. It doesn't matter. That will not work at all. मैंने save किया है, फिर भी it's not working. Okay. Basically, we have three differences with respect to the inline and block level elements. I'll just revise everything. The first difference is all the block level elements, they take up the entire width of the parent or the container. Now, यहाँ पर if you observe, all of these are the children of this article. And article ka width is this much. Because of that, all the block level elements take up the entire width of the parent, which is this article. Okay, so we have a question from Rajinder. Can we use div inside the span? You can, but you would never do that. You would never use a div inside a span. Okay, you can, it's possible, but don't do that. Okay. And second, my Pranjal is asking, is A an inline element? Yes, it is an inline element. Anchor tag is an inline element. Let's take a look example. So I will add an anchor tag here. I inline. Yes, I am. Okay. Let's target the anchor tag here. And let's give it a border of 10 pixel solid red. Okay. Let's make this a width of 700 pixels. C. Okay. Because the anchor tag is inline, it did not start on the new line, but it is there right beside the other inline elements. Okay. Now the other thing is, so the first difference is with respect to the width, and second difference is with respect to the fact that the block elements take up the end. They always start on the new line, but inline elements don't start on a new line. The third thing is, yeah, you cannot give a height and width to an inline element, but you can give a height and width to a block level element. Is everything clear, guys? Whatever we spoke till now? Okay, guys, let's move on to the last thing, which is the inline block.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me,
Go ahead, Rajinder. Tell me. Yeah.
अगर हम
div के स्पैन के अंदर div लगा के उसके अंदर ordered और in ordered list लगा दें तो वो
हाँ
सिंपली वो एक लाइन में आ जाएंगे.
see, first of all, why would you want to do that? Like, what is your goal?
सर एक्चुअली मैं चाहता
हाँ
हूँ
वो
कि
बताओ
मैं
मुझे.
पेज को डिवाइड कर दूं स्पैन लगा के. div लगा
Divide, like what do you mean by that? हाँ
सर लाइक एक आपने 2 स्पैन लगाए ना, मुझे ना
हाँ
डिस्प्ले दिखाइए, मुझे वो स्क्रीन दिखाइए.
हाँ
जैसे आपने
हाँ,
2
दो
स्पैन
स्पैन है यहाँ
लगाए,
पर. हाँ हाँ.
फर्स्ट में मैं div लगा के इधर एक काउंटिंग स्टार्ट कर दूं 1 2 3 4, सेकंड में div लगा के इसको काउंटिंग में कर दूं जैसे न्यूज़पेपर में होता.
You basically want to do this. Yeah, you want to add a div here, and you want to add the span inside this div, like this.
नो नो सर, स्पैन
हाँ,
स्पैन के अंदर div लगाना, पहले स्पैन स्पैन लगाना फिर उसके
span के अंदर div. So that's what so see, you might do that, लेकिन there is no point. Like, why would you do that? Goal क्या है तुम्हारा is the question. Let's just remove the border. The border बहुत बड़ा है. So it's like this. अभी क्या हुआ कि because we had a div here ना, तो ये पूरा एक line पे आ गया है. So if you inspect this, see it became its own line. it पूरा ले रहा है अभी.
सर
That's
इसको
what will happen
नहीं
if
नहीं
you.
सर, मैं ऐसा नहीं करना चाहिए, इसको ना अंडो करो, इसको अंडो करो एक बार फिर से.
Okay. Like this.
सर ये जो लगाया ना फर्स्ट स्पैन ना, जो फर्स्ट स्पैन है इसके आगे लास्ट में
ये वाला.
के, हाँ लास्ट में लास्ट पॉइंट पे div लगाओ.
हाँ
इसके आगे हाँ जहाँ जहाँ पे div स्टार्ट div here, और इसके अंदर ऑर्डर्ड लिस्ट लगाओ, इन ऑर्डर एंड ऑर्डर्ड लिस्ट. अब इसको करें.
हम्म.
हाँ सर ये चाहता था, ये देखना चाहता था. अभी जो
हाँ,
दूसरा
this will work ना. हाँ,
हम्म,
see the thing is ना, see ये div जो है वो एक ब्लॉक एलिमेंट हुआ ना. हाँ, तो div हमेशा एक नया लाइन पे आ जाएगा by default. Doesn't
उसमें
matter वो उसके सामने. हाँ
जो मेरा दूसरा स्पैन है, आई एम द सेकंड इन लाइन स्पैन, सर वो
हाँ.
फर्स्ट स्पैन के आगे नहीं जा सकता.
नहीं समझा, एक और बार बताओ.
जैसे ये है, जैसे जो लाइन लिखी है ना, आई एम द फर्स्ट इन
हाँ
लाइन एलिमेंट,
हाँ
इसके
हाँ.
आगे आई एम द सेकंड इन लाइन इन एलिमेंट नहीं हो सकता विदाउट चेंजिंग. हाँ लाइक दिस
Like this so you have to change it ना. ये तो नहीं होगा, नहीं तो
नहीं होगा.
नहीं होगा, नहीं तो. हाँ
ओके सर.
ठीक है. I mean see, there are advanced ways of doing it. लेकिन जब when you really want this, तो पहले HTML में चेंज करो,
जी जी
उसके बाद CSS में करो.
ओके सर.
ठीक है ना. And
जी
just
सर.
remember one thing, that every block level element will always start on a new line.
जी सर.
तो उसके बाद doesn't matter how many inline elements are there, doesn't matter.
सर हम इनको ऐसा कर सकते हैं, इसको
हाँ.
फ्रेम लगा के, फ्रेम कॉलम लगा के, फिर उसके बीच में इसको डाल के फिर हो सकता है.
फ्रेम मतलब
फ्रेम सेट लगा के.
हाँ. see अब the frame set अभी people are not using it anymore, Rajendra. Okay. Now actually see like कल में I'm going to talk about this thing called flexbox. Okay. तो उसमें you can do all of these things.
ओके सर.
ठीक है. हाँ, बट फ्रेम सेट कोई भी यूज नहीं करता आजकल.
ओके सर.
ओके.
ओके थैंक यू सर.
या नो प्रॉब्लम buddy. ठीक है. So let's proceed now. So this was all about this. Now the last thing that's left is inline block, which is this. So basically, if you want the best of both worlds, अगर तुमको एक hybrid solution चाहिए, which will be a mix of both of this, then you can actually use this thing called inline block. Okay. If you basically want a mix of both of these things, you can use inline block. अभी what is that? Mix का मतलब क्या है? We'll look into that. Now let's say कि अगर मैं चाहता हूं कि मेरा जो एलिमेंट है, it should be on the same line. Okay. By default, I do not want it to take up the entire width, and I do not want it to take a new line. लेकिन I should be able to give it a height and width. That is when the inline element comes into picture. Okay. So what you can do is, let's just remove all of this. Now, so we have two spans, Abhi. I'll target the span and I'll give it a display of inline block. When I do this, nothing will change initially. But let me give it a border of 2 pixels solid red. Okay. Nothing changes now, but when I give it a width this time, let's say I give it a width of maybe 300 pixels. This time, the width has applied to this. Okay, this is the major difference. Once you give a display of inline block, it will not start on a new line. It will not take up the entire width, just like inline elements. Like a block level element, it can take a height and width. I can give a height also here. Let's say height will be 300 pixels. Okay, like this. And I can make it, let's say 100, like this. Okay, which means an inline block element will always be on the same line. By default, it takes up the width of the content and not the parent, but you can give it a height and width afterwards. That's how an inline block element works. Got it, guys? Any questions with this one?
सर इसका मतलब ये है कि इनलाइन एलिमेंट कोई भी हो, हम उसको ब्लॉक लेवल बना सकते हैं और ब्लॉक लेवल को इनलाइन बना सकते हैं हम.
हाँ, we can. Okay, good question. Now let's say कि अगर मैं सब कुछ निकाल के इसको डिस्प्ले ब्लॉक कर देता हूँ, now it will behave like a block level element. I'll say border. Let's give it a background color. Background color will be, let's say, gray. See, right now both of them are behaving like block level elements. And let's say कि अगर मैं H1 को target करता हूँ, and if I give this a display of inline अभी, and I'll give this also display of inline. Now see what happened. Everything is an inline. So all of these are inline elements. मैंने अभी क्या किया कि I've changed all the paragraph tags to all the paragraph and H1 tags. I've changed them to inline, but I've changed the span to block. So all of this is possible. You can change the display property of any element that you want. Got it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now what else do I have? CSS में और क्या है? So let me do something. Let me just remove all of this. I'll just create a couple of divs here, like this. I'll just create one div actually, and let me target the div. Let me give it a height of 200 pixels and width of 200 pixels. Yeah. Let me, okay. मैंने अब दिया है, लेकिन why can't we see anything yet? Because there's no content here. If I give some content, I can see the content here. But if I just want to create a box, I should give this either a border, like 1 pixel solid red. I should either do this, or I should just give it a color. Background color देते हैं उसको. Let's go with hot pink, like this. Now what I want to do, so I want to, there is this thing called transform, okay? CSS transform property बोल के एक है, where you can transform the element. Okay, let's start with the simplest transform. Translate. Okay, now whenever you have an element like this, there are two axes. One is the x-axis, one is the y-axis. Right? Whenever you want to change or transform the element along the x-axis, you can use it, or you can transform on the y-axis also. Okay, you can transform it along both the axes like this. Okay, this is the element's initial position. If you want to transform it along the x-axis, you can do either like this or like this. And if you want to transform it on the y-axis, you can either do this or this. both you can do like this. Okay, let's say I want to transform this element along the x-axis. मुझे x-axis पे I want to move it by 200 pixels. अभी यहाँ पर है ना, let's say कि अभी it is like this for now. I want to move it like this, and for that I can use the transform translate. So we have this thing called transform, and we'll use the translate x करेंगे because we want translate it along the x direction. And if you enter a positive value like this, it will move to the right side. If you enter a negative value of, let's say, 50 pixels, that will move to the left. And let me increase this to 100. It's like this, okay? This is what the transform will do, okay? When you use a transform, and the translate x will move or transform the element along the x-axis. Now let's do the same thing with y-axis now. Let's say if I use the translate y, and if you get a positive value, वो नीचे जाएगा. But if you get negative value, it will go up. And if I want to give both translate x and translate y, I can directly use a shorthand for that, which is the translate. And the first value will be the x-axis ka value, and second will be the y-axis ka value. So abhi, it's like this. And if I change it to, let's say, positive value, it's like this. Okay, this is what the transform ka this thing will do. Okay? Now, why do we need this? We need this to animate items. Like in animation ke baare mein, we'll learn it a little later, or if we have time, we'll see it today. But just remember that we have a property called transform, which you can use to transform the item in multiple ways. The first way is using the translate, which we just saw. Now the next thing, let's say I want to increase or decrease the size of the element without changing the height and width. I can use that using the property called scale. So I'll use the transform again. I'll use the scale x. So if I want to increase the size along the x-axis, let's say this has to be a ratio. If you give 1, वो एक ही होगा. 1 का मतलब है कि जो भी original value था into 1, which means nothing will change, right? But if I make it, let's say 1.5, and if I save it, see now it's increased. So x-axis में वो scale हो गया है. The way it works is, let me show you here. Let's say this is the original box, and if I say scale 1.5, वो दोनों direction में 1.5 times of the original size हो जाएगा, like this. Okay, which means the original box was like this, and after scale of 1.5, it will become like this. Yes, scale x हुआ तो ठीक है. The same thing if I do with scale y, let's see what happens. Like this, and let's make it scale y. What will happen in this case is, this will go down like this, and like this. So 1.5 times of the original size, but on the y-axis. Let's check that now. So let's say कि scale x हो गया है, so let's make it scale y, and it will go down like this, and down and up. Basically, वो दोनों तरफ से वो खींच जाएगा. And if I just want to do it on both the sides, I have to just remove the y here, just place it like this. Okay. When you do scale, this value will be applied on both the axes, both the x-axis and the y-axis, that will be applied. So Rajinder, so let's say scale x will be like this. Yeah. And we can even use minus. Basically, minus will not work because it's always a positive value. If you want to decrease the size, then you have to use like 0. Some, let's say 0.5. Okay. 1 is the original size, and 0.5 is half of it, and 1.5 is 1.5 times of it. And this can be 2 times like this. Okay. You can never give a negative value because it's always multiple of the size.
Sir, if I increase only one side, like x-axis, positive x-axis or a positive y-axis, then
हम वही किए ना हम लोग यहाँ पर अभी.
सर जी बोथ साइड हो गया ना, x-axis में पॉजिटिव भी जा रहा और नेगेटिव भी जा रहा.
हाँ वो ऐसा ही होगा.
एक साइड नहीं जा सकता.
हाँ नहीं, you can't do that. No.
Sir, for translate
See, if you want, if you want to do it only one side, then you have to use the width property. Let's say कि मैं comment out करता हूँ. See, अभी ऐसा है ना. Let me change it to 300 pixel. Like this.
Thank you, sir.
That will happen to width, but the scale will always do it from both the sides.
Okay, sir.
Yep. Okay, so this was
Hello?
about the scale. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, to sir, there is any predefined table for the translate that for what position, that what values you have to enter like that.
Table is यही है. So just go to MDN again and just look at the values and learn from it. That's it. There's nothing else. No other.
Okay.
No other table. Yeah. Basically, guys, any questions you have with CSS, just come to MDN. That's it. Okay, and learn from here. And the one more thing I can talk about is maybe I can talk about this rotate. So rotate ka also we can try it out. Let's say कि rotate. I want to rotate it. Let's say I want to rotate like 100 degrees. So like this. If I change to let's say 150 degrees, like this. So all of these basically you will use it when you want to animate something. Like whenever you, I'll give an example. Okay. So let me just remove this. And let's say कि on hover, जब मैं hover करता हूँ, I want to have to rotate the div like this. ठीक है? लेकिन if you see, it doesn't look very smooth ना. Like जब मैं करता हूँ, it becomes like suddenly हो जाता है. We have a property to take care of that also. And that is a transition property where you'll just say all 0.5 seconds is in whatever you want. Now see what happens. Like this. Okay, this is what you see on websites, right? Animation ka. We can make it even slower also if you want. Let's make it like 1 second. Like this. Now what I've done here is, see, there is a property called transition. What transition does is, see, whenever we change any property on this element, वो उसको transition करेगा बस. Okay. And all क्या कर रहा हूँ कि what I mean by all is whichever property is being changed. Okay. चाहे कोई भी वैल्यू चेंज हो इस div के अंदर, उस सबको ट्रांजिशन करो, and the duration should be 1 second, and ease in जो है उसका बहुत सारे values है, which again you can just go to MDN and check. But again, like I said, see, all of this is not very important, guys, because आप लोग animations आप ज्यादा नहीं लिखोगे. Okay, आप लोग बाकी सबको ज्यादा लिखोगे, और animation का anyway it's not required to know much. But if you guys have interest, I would strongly recommend to just go and learn about the transitions यहाँ पर. Okay, we have all of these things. But again, like I said, not very important. But if you guys want to know more, we can have a separate, like a single class just on that. Because I can't cover that in one, I can't cover that now. But we can take a separate class. But आप लोग बताना, so if you guys want, we can do that also. ठीक है? Yeah, so this is all I want to talk about for today. So kal we'll learn about the Flexbox, and then we'll finish off the CSS class tomorrow. And next hafte se we'll learn JavaScript. Okay? Any questions for me, guys, today? If I know, sir. Okay. Thanks, Rajendra. Okay, guys, if there's no questions, we'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye. Good night. Take care. Bye.